So what's up, Dan? It's been over a year.
What's up? It has been over a year, and and I think you can see that just from I was looking at the screenshot of the last interview, and I definitely didn't have any tattoos. So I
Yep.
didn't. I was a little bit bigger in the face, to say the least. So hey, amazing what can happen in a year, right? How are you?
I'm doing really well, man. Really well, yeah.
You're looking well.
Thanks, man. You too.
Apartment is that your apartment or is it your office?
No, it's my office. It's like a studio slash office. I tend to use it more as an office since I don't make music anymore. But
Yeah,
there is like a studio environment where I'm looking at right now, so you can't see it.
yeah.
But officially, it's a studio. It's an old piggery, actually.
Okay, love that.
Yeah.
That's that good dynamic Dutch use of space. Love it.
Exactly, yeah. It's like a farmer who he sold his animals, so he decided to remodel all the parts that he had, and
Right.
Firebeat is here, located here as well.
Okay.
They've been here for like several years, and they tipped me the location, so that's why I'm here.
Nice.
Yeah. So, like you mentioned, I think earlier before we started recording the call, like I've been following you on social media for the last couple of months, and even we didn't spoke that much, I still had an idea of what you were up to, and you've been insane on the mindset game lately, man. Like the boxing and the weight losing and healthy food as well.
Yeah, I mean, I started this journey just a little bit before you and I did our interview, and I think
Mm-hmm.
I was a lot less vocal about it
Mm-hmm.
last year, just because I I've always been of the mind that you shouldn't start talking about things like you're an expert until you've actually mastered them, or you've actually got through the process. And I was going through a real transitional phase, and I was coming out at the end of a severe burnout that
Mm-hmm.
left me hospitalized, and that could have
Oh
really
shit.
seriously damaged my brain back in that would have been March of 2018. I collapsed in the bathroom and
Holy shit.
split my face open on my door frame, caught the back of my head on a sink. I regained consciousness covered in blood. My girlfriend at the time was there, panicking because all she'd heard was a big thud.
Wow. And that was
And
because
yeah,
of the workload, or?
it was a mixture of things. To be like, now when I look back on it, my lifestyle habits were pretty atrocious. I was still quite a heavy drinker back then. I wasn't sleeping very well. I was eating poorly. High stress job. I'd have been about a year and a half, 2 years into the company, or running above board entertainment group at that point, and that had been a very fulfilling period, but also a very stressful one and quite chaotic. It was the first time I'd owned a company, let alone run a company. And as you'll probably know by now, there's a huge difference between working for someone and working for yourself, and then like trying to scale said company whilst also doing a job. And so, I think it was really a culmination of those things that just hit me. And I went to the hospital with it. I was in the hospital for about a day and had 7 stitches in my eye, and they took all sorts of tests, ECG tests, scanned my head, took everything. And the frustrating thing was, on paper, there was nothing wrong with me.
Yeah, like physically, there was nothing wrong.
There was nothing wrong with me except that I was overweight, and I was clearly stressed, and my heart rate was up a little bit. I would argue probably because I just twatted my face on a wall, and that'll do it. But no, so that for me was a huge wake up call. That was me at 28 years old, having that kind of impact on my life, and something that, just shouldn't be happening to anyone really, let alone somebody at my age. So it was a big wake up call, and I was actually due in Los Angeles the week after that. I was supposed to be in Miami with Steve Aoki and the Dim Mat Gang, and I had to cancel last minute, which was really, really frustrating. I was sat at home with my stitches in my face. Everyone was getting their selfies with Shaq, and I'm like, fuck, I want to be in Miami hanging with Shaq.
Yeah.
For fuck's sake. But, that happened. So, and then I went out to Los Angeles, and I was, I had a lot of meetings, was a lot of stuff coming to the table, and I was just starting to think, right, it's time to really start making a change here. Start, working out how to make this a bit more sustainable. And that was a process that started then and is kind of still ongoing, but I feel like I found a happy medium. Sadly, before that happy medium was starting to take shape, myself and all of my peers and friends around me, we lost a very important person in the form of Tim Bergling, which happened about 3 weeks after I got back from Los Angeles. And to be honest, at the time, just completely destroyed me in the sense that I didn't even know if I wanted to continue working in music anymore.
Yeah,
and
can imagine.
that's a pain that I know I definitely wasn't alone in feeling. And I made a very, very active decision not to talk in the media about it or in this sort of format about it at the time, because it wasn't my place to. You know what I mean? I was grieving, no more or less than so many of my colleagues and other friends and such. But then at the same time, the only people
have you been working with him?
With Tim, I was head of publicity and marketing for At Night Management for 3 years.
Wow.
Which is why I moved to Stockholm. And Tim was very important to my career. Yeah. And At Night was very important to my career, and it was a huge loss. But and also, you know, Tim himself, he was an amazing guy, and it's really not my place to discuss anything to do with his personal life or those circumstances or things like that, I think. And that was also part of the reason why, other than I think a Facebook post to my closest friendship group in the industry, I kind of kept stump on it, because I was a real mix of very sad and very angry and disappointed with the way that the industry responded to it at large. And I saw a lot of examples of people coming out of the woodwork who really hadn't been there at all, or, you know, certainly not when that project or the people around it, you know, needed it the most. Yeah. And so they're coming to get their 5 minutes of fame. And that disgusted me. And that was, you know, to this day, there are people who know very well that's how I feel about that. But, you know, it was a very disappointing time. And so the best thing I felt I could do was to be there for the people that mattered the most, and that was his closest friends and the people I worked with at Night, and that was that. Yeah. Of course, that definitely has added a layer of something to this process that I've been going through. And I'm not going to stand here, and I'll be honest, this is the first time I've spoken about this in this kind of forum. So I'm glad to do it here, because I think your platform is exactly the kind of place where productive discussions can be had about personal things. But I'm not here to perpetuate anything else on that subject, because quite frankly, it's not my place to. But to say that losing Tim has been a huge part of this process, I mean, that's an understatement, quite frankly.
I think if you have a look at the whole industry, like, it was maybe it was to you as well, it was a wake-up call in some kind of way.
I think it was a wake-up call that hasn't been taken particularly seriously since that initial month of headlines. And I've been very open about my personal struggles with mental health. And I think the reason I do that is because I think that desensitizing mental health problems and just creating open, honest discussion about these things is the best possible way that we can start sort of tapping deeper into, you know, how they affect so many people at large. I mean, honest to God, even outside of the music industry, I would say that 3 out of 4 of my friendship group or peers or people that I operate with on a daily basis have been formally diagnosed with some form of mental health problem. Yeah. And that's everyone. That's people, that's millionaires. That's people with 9-to-5 jobs. That's people with families and who are, you know, on the shell of things you would not expect. But this is what we need to appreciate, I think, on a wider scale. There is no face of mental health problems. So many of them are fought completely behind the scenes. And that's the problem. And I don't look to blame people when it comes to mental health problems. I've never had that idea of, oh, we need to work out who to blame for these problems, or we need to work out who's caused this in this person or that person. That's not it. It's more about how you help people to work through them and to find a way in which they can restore their lives and their livelihoods and deal with it. Because we need to get away from this idea that to deal with mental health problems makes you broken. But we also need to stop. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a way to put this without it sounding harsh, but there is also, so when Gary Vee started getting big, I used to refer to what he did as entrepreneur porn and like hustle porn, because I felt like they were over glorifying something that actually, you know, I didn't think that we should be glorifying kids staying up until 4 a.m. hustling, working, because quite frankly, that's what put me in fucking the hospital. You know what I mean?
Well, you know, so, working hard is not bad, but you should know you should have the balance correctly, right?
You should work smart. You should work
exactly.
smart.
You should work. You should work. You should sleep. You should eat well. You should take rest. Like work hard, rest hard.
No, exactly. And so and at the same time, I think mental health needs to be dealt with openly, but not romantically. You know, we don't need to turn it into like a Starbucks style quick fix kind of solution. Yeah, but you know what I mean. I'm really simple.
You know, to me, it's like I see it more as like a maintenance program. You know, it's not like you talk once and it's done. It's something that will keep coming at you for the rest of your life, because you're a human being and you will keep having struggles along the way. It's just that those struggles will change. Like right now, the biggest problem in my life might be having too less time. And 10 years from now, the biggest problem could be that my mom is dying or my father is dying. You know, like different challenges will come on your path.
Mental health is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week issue. Yeah. And it's great that we have things like Mental Health Awareness Day, which I think happened a few weeks ago. Yeah. That's great. I'm not saying we should get rid of that at all. I'm saying the ideas that everyone was so eloquently discussing then need to be repeated every fucking day. Every day without fail. And if it takes people like me to just tell our experiences and our stories as it is and show, hey, you can have a company, you can be successful, you can work with all these A-list artists and athletes and whatever, and be, you know, in the best health of your life and still be dealing with these things behind the scenes. That's what we need. We need to normalize the vulnerability, to make it a normal discussion where you can just pick up the phone and say, hey, Dan, how you feeling? And I say, well, you know what, Joey, my anxiety is really, really, you know, hitting me at the moment. And I'm trying to work out what's triggering it. And that's how the conversation should be. Yeah. And going back to it, we've gone on a little bit of a tangent, but you'd have thought that would have been a wake-up call in terms of loss that we experienced. But then you look at people's touring schedules and the habits and the way that I still see people within the industry at the desks, not even behind the decks, like at their desks, we are still overworking people. We are stressing them beyond belief, making work-life balance impossible. We're perpetuating all these stereotypes about the type of lifestyle that people who work in entertainment or the music industry should have. And that's where it's still very fucked up, and I still think we have a long way to go. And I don't want to sound like a negative.
No, but you have a point.
But it's, you know, this is the thing. We need to be realistic, and we need to look at that. And I still go out to Los Angeles for work or for whatever reason and meet people and talk to them, and it shocks me just how much these people are expected to give, just almost for the privilege of working in music. And don't get me wrong. The fact that I've been afforded this luxury of working in this industry for a decade now, I am beyond privileged because I love what I do, and I have loved what I do for probably 85% of the time. And not everyone can say that. But it doesn't mean I owe the music industry my well-being. I'm not going to give the music industry my well-being or my health. No one should be able to take that, right? Yeah. So we've made a few positive steps. I see conversation happening more.
Yeah.
I see public engagement happening more. I see charities trying to drive awareness. I commend what the Tim Bergling Foundation are trying to do with the tribute concert and raising awareness for a problem that needs to continue to be discussed. So
have you been at
to that
AE?
extent that we're making it? No, I sat Amsterdam Dance Event out this year.
Because there were there were a lot of mental health panels, and like in the last couple of years you saw the amount of mental health panels growing, but especially this year, like there were a lot of those things. And aside from that, you noticed that when you were talking to someone, mental health was kind of the number one thing everybody was talking about. So I can totally agree with you, as in of course there have been some bigger artists in the last couple of months who decided to say like, hey, I'm gonna take a step back, or I'm gonna change things up, like Hardwell for instance. But at the same time, the people at the desks, like that's a place where things needs to change as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I like to think, and I'm hearing things from various companies in Europe, certainly, where those appreciations are being taken a little bit more seriously. America, I'm not going to comment on a country that I'm barely in, all right? But from what I've seen and what I've experienced, they have a long way to go. And I'm going to say this on the record, just because it's been that way for a decade, 2 decades, 5 years, however long, doesn't mean it's fucking acceptable anymore. And I think a lot of executives, a lot of people, the Scooter Brauns of this world, the Moshe Zillies of this world, the people who actually have the platform and the power to make the change, they need to be the ones that are fucking gearing this. And by the way, that's not me saying that Scooter Braun and Moshe Zilli are the people treating their staff wrong. Yeah. But I'm saying it's people in those positions of power that can affect change. And I want to see as much more of that positive change as we can, and anything I can do to facilitate that change, I'm going to do. Because again, I don't believe in the I'm just one person mentality. One person can move mountains in terms of culture and mindset.
Especially if you have the following and if you have the people to put in motion, But it's great to see that that you've changed so much in 1 year. Like it's almost 1 year after, and you can clearly see a new Dan from my perspective.
A few tattoos as well.
A few tattoos, like outside and inside.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's what they say. When you start working out, you start getting tattoos, and then
Really? Oh shit. Cool. Well, I wanted to go over some things. Before we start off, like first, maybe it's important for the people who are listening, because I might have some new listeners at the time since a year. Who haven't? So. Yeah, exactly. I would hope so as well. But if they haven't heard about the last podcast, can you tell the people what you do? Because I see you also started a new company on your Instagram called the Good Fight Agency.
Absolutely. So I, for all intents and purposes, am split between 3 main things at this point in my life. I run Above Board Entertainment Group, which is a marketing agency focused on the music and entertainment sector. We're currently mainly focusing on digital marketing and streaming strategy, alongside clients such as Don Diablo, YMU Group. Been doing a lot of work with Dim Mak. We were involved in the last T-Pain album, One Up.
Cool.
Some stuff with Theophilus London last year as well. And at this stage, the roster is pretty much those artists, give or take, and I do a lot of work still with guys like the guys and girls over at Spinning Records and such. So that's one part of my life, and a very fulfilling part, because that's my first company, and it's been a hell of a ride. I just really enjoyed it. Worked with some incredible artists. Got to work with Rehab for 2 years, and I'd argue that was a incredibly prolific 2 years for myself and for Fadil. The Zara Larsson project, got to be involved in her album, So Good, which last time I checked was the second most streamed album by a female artist ever.
Sick. Yeah.
Take that, Whitney Houston. And otherwise, just some fun projects as well, like relaunching Cisco's Thong Song, which was just
Relaunching. Holy shit, that was a
crazy.
big one.
Yes, I came on as strategic international PR and marketing for Warner Music on that one, and we just had so much fun with it. We, working with a guy on a remake of a song that I've been listening to since school discos. That was crazy. And
that was good.
so it's been fun, and we're 3 years old now. Above Board Entertainment Group. We keep it very small. We're a 3-person team. And I love it that way because it remains boutique and I get to work very in depth with the clients. I do. Alongside that, I started boxing very formally about 1.5 years ago. Originally, it just started as a thing to do to make sure I kept the weight off. And I'm a huge boxing fan as well. That's probably the one thing other than the music industry and streaming and that you can get me talking about for literally hours on end, which is probably why most the music industry people stopped following me on Instagram because I think they were bored shit.
Tired of the shit, yeah. Like, what the fuck is he doing?
What are you talking about? But yeah, and so I'm now preparing to start fighting competitively at the beginning of next year, which is great. And I'm doing that under the legendary Fifth Street Gym over in Miami, who gave rise to little guys like Muhammad Ali and people like that. So and working with them and getting taught by guys like Dino Spencer and Coach Guy over there has just been one of the most humbling experiences.
I don't know those names, but they probably are big names in the industry.
You know what? They're good at what they do, and for some reason they've wasted their time teaching me how to box. And I don't know why. They must. I think I get away with a lot of stuff just from being a bit likable because it sure as hell wasn't based on my boxing ability. I'll tell you that. But no, so that's been a lot of fun. And then on top of that, because of these two worlds coming together, I've been exposed to a lot of great meetings and discussions with athletes and sports brands and lifestyle brands. And what I realized was I was having the same discussions in terms of what they needed and what they were looking for that I was having with all the clients when I was starting up Above Board Entertainment Group. It was the needs were so similar. All that changed was the context and the platforms and the final destination, let's say. So after a lot of back and forth and talking to a few people in America, I've stepped up to the plate with a new agency, which has been called The Good Fight, but we're currently actually working out what our to-market brand will be called because I'm not convinced that it's a good idea to have a company named after a very famous legal drama that's currently on TV, which I was unaware of when I named it. But, so we're coming to market in February. I'm not going to say too much about who I'm going to be working with and such, but it's really exciting for me to be able to bring these two worlds together. And I'm very passionate about the work we've started doing already with our clients over there. And the idea of I spent a decade trying to empower artists that I admired, and now I get to spend a decade empowering athletes that I'm equally in awe of. So I honestly feel like I'm one of the luckiest people alive because somehow I keep getting given the opportunity to do stuff I love. And that's, you can't take that for granted. You cannot take that for granted. Not many people get to say that, let alone twice in their lifetime.
Well, it's great. It's great, man. I actually believe that, I've been thinking about it with the coaching as well. Like, top sport and artists are similar in a lot of ways.
Most definitely.
As in, they have the same lifestyles. It's the same kind of branding.
I don't know about lifestyles.
Yeah,
man.
well, not about food and stuff,
wrong,
but more about
to some extent. I guess they're all brands, aren't they?
Yep.
And the different, you look at it in music, you have brands, and they're all competing to be, supported and shown on social media, and they're trying to distribute their music effectively through platforms such as Spotify and Apple Music. Flip that over to athletes. They're still brands. They're still using the same platforms, arguably to far less niche audiences. And instead of the DSPs, you've got broadcasters and the people that are promoting their
Yeah.
actual events and fights and things like that. So it's the ecosystem isn't that different. And I think the only thing I would say is that from what I have seen so far, the sports side of things, they know their value, and they're kind of selling it. You know, they've been around, and I think as a result, there's less. No, I'm going to rephrase that. I think there's been more money in sports for longer.
Yeah.
I think, it's certain, dance music, let's face it, 10 years ago, there weren't that much money in it. And Vegas thing wasn't as prevalent as it is now. Sports, and especially like combat sports, I would say, they're a bit more used to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think they've been broke as much as the music industry has. And that, I say that with the utmost respect. I think it just changes the dynamic when it comes to how you share with people.
So how do you help those clients? And let's just take it over, like top sport clients, but also artists. Like, what do you do for them? Where do you start?
We start by asking them what the vision is, and we start by working out where are we going.
Mm-hmm.
What's the long term here? And that could be as easy as someone turning around and saying, we want our guy to be the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. Mm-hmm. For example, let's keep it boxing. All right. And then we say, okay.
For example.
So, for example, that. So then we say, right, if that's the case, then what do we need to do to build the brand of the incoming undisputed heavyweight champion of the world? Mm-hmm. And there are so many components to this. It's everything from what does that brand feel like when the audience finds it for the first time. And I think it's about navigating the journey through a very solid digital strategy, for developing content that serves a purpose and fills a gap. I think it also comes from helping them build consistently around all the key digital platforms and alongside the partners that be there for them throughout the duration of their journey. Mm-hmm. And I don't care what you say, because, I know certainly the favorite DSPs, are pretty much set in stone for now and that. But if you're not working with somebody long term, then you're far less likely to have them invest in you long term. And by the way, investment, I'm not talking about money, I'm talking about time.
Yep. I'm
talking about attention. Mm-hmm. So that's how the conversations start. Mm-hmm. And it can be, a lot more micro. It can be stuff like working out who the right brands that these people should be affiliated with, what the crossover value is between said brand and said athlete, and then starting to negotiate ways in which those two facets can collaborate effectively and such. And like I say, I'm so new in the sports side. I'm still getting my bearing as to what is and isn't possible. But from the early discussions I've been having with the new roster, there's a lot of fun things to be done.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I mean, things that as a sports fan I would look at, and as a boxing fan I would look at and think, that's legit, that's real.
And are you talking about content or?
Yeah, content, brand partnerships, things that keep the audience engaged in between fights, things that get people gassed as they're going towards fights, things that attract people who may not have even known that they wanted to watch a guy fight.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And there is a lot of synergy there between bringing a new artist or a slightly unknown artist to market as there is bringing an athlete to market. Difference is the context and the sport and, of course, the niche factors there. But you know what? That can all be learned. I'm learning. And and it's very early days of that journey, and I'm lucky. I've got a few people engaged who very much have their roots dipped in the sports industry already. So I'm not winging it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that I noticed as well, one big difference between top sport guys and artists is the age thing. Like with most sports, age kind of is this thing, because when you become too old, you're not valuable anymore. Your body becomes too old, you become too slow or whatever. And you're just done in the industry. And
tell that to Mike Tyson, who's now selling weed very
exactly.
successfully.
Yeah, he leveraged it.
The
He
biggest
leveraged his
podcast.
attention to build something else, and that's incredible. But I think
Now
that's
they're
not.
talking about bringing Vladimir Klitschko out of retirement, who wants to wait another 2 years so he can be the oldest heavyweight champion of the world. And we're talking deals in excess of 75 million. Was it even seven? It was dumb numbers. You know what I mean? It was big numbers.
Yeah.
So the age thing.
But I think
a
you can win from that age thing once you build a brand from yourself. Because Mike Tyson has become this brand, you know. He started to do movies. He started to do commercials. Like, he started to do more than just fighting.
Definitely. And I mean, I think he's a good example of someone who came back from loss and came back from, well, worse than loss. He went to prison, for God's sake.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And still came back, as did Lennox Lewis, as I hope Anthony Joshua will on December the 7th. You know, there's a lot to be done, and I think it's about having this vision for legacy. Yeah. And legacy is a word I throw around so much now. It's almost been the buzzword since I started working with athletes, but legacy is important, and I wish more music clients thought about legacy. Yeah. I really do. Yeah, because I'll tell you what, the New Music Friday ads you got 3 Fridays ago, no one's talking about them this week, and they sure as fuck won't be talking about them in 20 years.
Nope. What is that? One of the biggest difference you see, like with artists not having a long-term plan?
100%. Okay. 100%, and it's very worrying because I've always been taught from my parents to when I was in university to pretty much everything I've done, start with an end in mind. Mm-hmm. You know, that's just been at the basis of everything I've ever done. So when I start anything, I'm always thinking about what the best possible outcome would be. And that could be me picking up the Nobel Peace Prize in 30 years. You know what I mean? I'm just saying there needs to be that long-term vision and that long-term aspiration. And then I think if you know where you're heading, it's a lot easier to be sort of nimble and on your feet as things go. Because if you're going to have a long career, you're going to have to deal with change. Yep. Let's take music, for example. Guys that were very comfortable with the CD model and selling their things in HMV and negotiating to have their stuff at the front shelf and all that stuff, suddenly had their world turned upside down when iTunes came to town and MP3s became a thing, and suddenly they got rid of all the distribution costs and things like that, but they had to deal with a whole new system for getting their music scene. Yeah. And then off the back of that, we all know what happened with streaming. You know, the world keeps changing, and it's no different in sports. Right now, we have DAZN, for example, in America, who are really challenging the old pay-per-view model of purchasing fights, because people in America could be spending up to $80 to watch a fight.
Holy shit.
And here's DAZN coming in offering all these sports and all the boxing and I believe UFC and things like that for $20 a month.
Like a subscription.
Exactly, like the Netflix of sport. And I'm pretty sure that's ruffled some feathers in TV land, and good. You know what I mean? Because like I said earlier, just because it's been that way for a while doesn't mean it needs to stay that way.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
You know, and we saw what happened with it in music, and we saw, you know, it all got a little bit silly in music. I think people rush to master new things and new platforms when they come, and maybe we ended up giving the streaming platforms a little bit too much power somewhere along the line. I feel like that power shift is changing a little bit now, though.
To where?
I think. Well, let me rephrase that. I'm having a lot of conversations with labels and managers and publishers and people like that, and there doesn't feel like there's that desperation to get Spotify's nod of approval anymore. Yeah. What they still want to be on the platforms, and they still want to work with the platforms, and they still see the value in the platforms, because of course there's value in those platforms, but they're also thinking about how to build their own audiences and how to have a way to communicate and push things to their audience that they own, that they can control. And that's important, because I don't think there's a sustainable future for people whose entire strategy is based on being put in Spotify playlists.
No, you're relying on one. Yeah, you're relying on one company, and if they decide to do it differently tomorrow, you just have to deal with it.
Well, absolutely, and you notice as well. I think a lot of people got a bit bent out of shape when Spotify started really putting emphasis on people submitting through their Spotify for Artists thing. But realistically, of course, that was going to become the case, because how can you possibly keep up with the demand when you're a publicly listed company who's only got a certain amount of editorial resource? Because realistically, how much do they rely on editorial in the grand scheme of Spotify as a big company? And that, so, and these poor people, I mean, they must be inundated, these editors. I honestly, I'm not saying I feel sorry for Spotify editors, but I understand why having that sort of role and being in that sort of position must be pretty damn overwhelming.
Yeah.
And you have these people who would do anything to try and secure your consistent support.
Yeah.
So, the whole Spotify for Artists thing, that was just inevitable. They were trying to save their staff more than anything. And, it's a lot of people suddenly panicked. And then I wondered, like, okay, if you're panicking now, what does that say about how you really feel about the quality of your product and the quality of your project? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If
became too much, maybe.
Yeah, I think you need a healthy pinch of everything. You should definitely not be shrugging at being put in official Spotify playlists. And that's great. And if you're getting every new Music Friday in the world, that is, of course, going to probably help make sure that everyone in the music industry hits your record, because I don't think anyone outside of the music industry listens to New Music Friday personally. But then they have a lot of playlists that consumers do listen to, and a lot of new algorithmic playlists and things like that, which are just, it's all very positive. This is not in any way an attempt to trash talk Spotify at all. But the projects I love working are the ones where I can go and look at the back end data, and the bar, if we're talking percentages and stuff, the bar that is people of their own accord saving music into their own playlists and stuff, if that's bigger than the editorial and the algorithmic ones, then we're winning.
Yeah, you're good to go.
It's so good that we have Spotify on board, and it's so good that these esteemed tastemakers are supporting it. But you know what? If they suddenly decide, let's cut all of our costs and get rid of all of our editors and just make the computers do it, I'm not saying that will happen. Maybe.
Could be.
But then, hey, at least you've still got your fan base and the things that you've built to fall back on.
So that all comes back again to having a strong brand, like being in a position where you can drive your audience from, let's say, Instagram to another platform like Spotify and make them save the track into their own playlist. That's way more valuable than getting an editorial.
I believe so.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
It's and I think the artists that have been clever about leveraging how their audience interacts with them within these apps. So, urging them to follow them, having playlists of their own that people follow and do. That's good, because it shows that you're not relying on a helping hand from Spotify. You're actually bringing, and I think that only strengthens the conversations you have with Spotify as well. Because you say, look, we're not coming here begging you to support us. We're bringing our audience with us.
Yeah.
You can see that we're doing a good job of it. Doesn't that warrant some support? On the flip side, I hope they don't do what Facebook did and say, oh, thank you for bringing all these people to our platform. Now you can pay us to fucking talk to them.
Start paying, yeah, exactly.
Start paying, cough up. And I mean, I don't think they would.
No.
Mind you, we said that.
Yeah, exactly. Now we're laughing, but maybe we're crying in 2 years. What could happen?
They are starting to roll out the sponsored placement stuff, and that's, as long as it's obvious that it is advertorial, then
in the end, it's a company. They need to make money. Simply,
it's a publicly listed company.
Yep, they need to make their numbers every year, every quarter, and that's something we have to take into consideration every time. But it's so amazing for me to see that it almost really doesn't matter what you talk about in music land. It all comes back to that brand. Like, if
Yeah.
you manage to get a strong brand, you can seriously leverage anything you want. You can get sponsor deals. You can get your people to sign up for your course. You can get people to sign up for this, to buy merchandise. It's all that brand.
No, absolutely. I think from the outset, whatever you're creating, whether you're a music artist, whether you're a company, whether you're a content provider, I always go by the what would this look like if it was slapped on a t-shirt mentality. There isn't a single good brand logo out there or brand that I think has stood the test of time that doesn't have that kind of pull. Spotify is a great example. Their little green logo looks fucking great on a t-shirt.
Yep.
The Nike swoosh, that looks good on everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's the brand. Now we're just talking, of course, about the visible brand, but again, all of these things, and brand is key.
Yeah.
And I think the people in this industry that have pushed the barriers, let's say, and kept on growing are the ones that have leveraged brand. And they're usually the ones that get the most criticism for it.
Exactly.
And that's a whole different
and
debate. I'm far too old and cynical to get too involved in that one.
Can you explain a bit more about, because the word brand is, at least that's what I get a lot from my followers and from my clients as well. Like, you keep saying brand, but what does it really mean, and how do I get it? It's so vague.
Okay, so brand is a concoction to me anyway, and this is just my. And keep in mind, I am of the school of I started doing this, and that's my qualification. You know what I mean? I studied fucking journalism and English 10, 11, 12 years ago. So this has been something that I've just been lucky enough to grow with and learn on the run, let's say. To me, brand is that beautiful combo of image, community, and experience, and how those three things tie together. Because it's the touch points. What does the brand, or what do you look like? What is the visible experience of this? So, for example, Marshmallow, it's that comic book appeal. It's the head.
Yep.
It's the the anonymous. We don't know. I mean, I'm guessing it's a dude, right? But no one's really expressly said that. So it's that. It's the visibility. And this is where I was talking a bit about the t-shirt mentality.
Yeah.
Can we slap there? Then you've got the experience. So what is the experience of that particular artist? Now let's keep it dance music for the sake of this audience. Eric Prydz, his epic shows. That's the experience. That is the thing that people queue up down the road in Ibiza and go to Madison Square Garden and all of that stuff to experience. It's, that when you go see Eric Prydz, you're going to see more fucking laser beams than 20 years of playing laser tag with your friends. You know what I mean? Yeah. It is going to be a complete, a fireworks display of light, pretty much, right? That's the experience. And then the community, how you as a brand and your product comes together and is experienced by people simultaneously. And I think the best examples of community are where an artist comes to embody a lifestyle choice. And Drake and the OVO brand, I think, are the best example of this, because when you say Drake and you say OVO, you know how those people are dressing, you know what they look like, you know what their social circle looks like. And that's because Drake, well, he has had his moments of doing Latin music, his little crossover to helping out the UK scene and bringing Top Boy back and all that good stuff. They have, over a long period of time, more than a decade, made OVO not only a kind of a sound and a music collective, but also like a community lifestyle that people subscribe to and people want to be a part of.
Yeah, because they can relate to it.
Exactly, and that is, I think, the three components that really harness brand as we're talking about it. And then, of course, the idea of all of that is that it strengthens people's desire to consume you as a product or the product that you're providing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think as well, those things come together to demonstrate value. And so instead of it just being like a buy-sell kind of dynamic, through the brand, you're providing value that makes consumption of you as a product or an artist second nature. They don't even have to think about it. Yeah. That's my interpretation of it. And I'm sure there are many scholars who will tell you that, well, actually, you know, here's some scientific jargon from 20 fucking years ago that every kid with 20 million YouTube subscribers doesn't know about.
Yeah.
I think that's the beauty, I think, of brand, and I think of marketing generally as well. And people like Gary Vee have made this point several times over and far more eloquently. But yeah, you can go to school and learn how the textbooks do it and think about it, or you can just go and start looking at the world around you and learn it on your feet, because marketing has changed so much.
Change every day because of the platforms. It changed every day.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what keeps it exciting. Yeah. That is what keeps it very, very exciting. Can I be an absolute pain, and can we pause very quickly while I quickly run to the bathroom?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes. There he is.
Well, hey, sorry about that.
No worries. So
drank too much water.
I can relate to that as well. But regarding the branding thing, like it keeps amazing me what I think people really underestimate how long it could take before you actually manage to build some kind of brand. You know, like you mentioned, it requires time as well, experience, and that's not something
good brands have values. I think the best brands in the world have values, or things that people gravitate towards or recognize in them. And values for me are perpetuated by consistency. So you have to keep turning up with those values, and you have to keep demonstrating them for them to really, really stick. And that takes time. And I guess one of the challenges that music has is that it has phases, and it has genres that come in and out of, the spotlight, which accordingly can make building values long term a challenge, especially if you're one of those artists who is chasing the buzz sounds. And I think electronic music is very guilty of this, in terms of, I look at all the artists who were very comfortably making good quality club music and big room house, whatever you want to call it, who then, as soon as people such as Avicii or the Chainsmokers or Steve Aoki, or we could list so many people, I just chose to list the ones I've worked with, but
what a coincidence.
But all of those people start making mainstream pop records, and they start sticking, and then you saw all of these people start trying to do the same thing. Now they've spent a few years prior to that, or longer, building up a very committed crowd who associated the experience of being into that artist with this big room house music and going to these club shows and hearing that music. So suddenly your guys turn around and they're making pop records. Like, well, hold on, I didn't sign up for this. Exactly. And by the way, if I'm going to listen to pop music, I'm probably going to listen to Justin Bieber and the top 40 stuff that's being played on repeat everywhere. So then you're like, oh God, my following has dipped and people aren't consuming my records, which is strange because they sound like the ones that the famous people are making and such. And then you try going back after that. You know what I mean? Because once the ticket sales have dried up and the promoters are worried that you're not going to be good for it anymore, you've got to almost hit restart. And I saw a lot of artists do that. And, to be honest, it was mainly European artists.
I've seen it happening a lot as well.
Yeah, and you know what? Maybe the monetary value of doing that behind the scenes was enough that those people are listening to this like, what the fuck do you know? And you know what? I'll take that. Yeah. I'm not all seeing, all knowing. But I saw a lot of people very, very demonstratively, desperately trying to climb back into that, club-centric market, and struggling second time around because their core audience had either lost interest or grown up and didn't want to do that. Didn't want to go and listen to that music in the clubs anymore. Because
they settled down.
Yeah, but going back to the original point, I think it's about that long term
Yeah.
value proposition and working out, right, what's the journey? How does the audience take that with us? How do we engage them across this life cycle of how we want to grow the project?
Hmm.
How do we introduce new fans into that along the way? Because you need to top up your fan base, and so it's there's no one size fits all
No.
method of doing that.
But overall, like if I have a look back at my career, for instance, every short-term decision that I made damaged my career.
Me too,
Every
to be
short-term
honest.
decision, like it's the long-term decisions that brought value over time, of course. Maybe not in the beginning, but over time.
It's a game of patience. Honest to
Yeah.
God, a year and a half ago, I worked out properly for the first time in about a year and a half, 2 years. 15 minutes into that workout, I had to run to the bathroom and vomit very violently. I was not well.
Yeah.
Right then, I had a fucking decision to make. Am I going to turn up again tomorrow and try this again? Or am I going to quit? Because you know what would have happened if I'd quit? I'd still be severely overweight and very unhealthy and
Yeah.
not working towards a sustainable level of health. But you turn up, and you turn up the day after that, and you turn up the day after that. And suddenly you're surrounded by peers who recognize that you are now a part of their world
Yeah.
and their life. And, you know, from that first boxing session where you go sparring and get 10 shades of shit beaten out of you to a year later where you've just ducked out of rounds of heavy sparring and everyone in the gym's patting you on the back saying, way to go. Like that's how I try to,
Yeah.
you know, make people understand the difference between short-term thinking and short-term decisions and that long-term thing.
Yeah.
And everything good that's happened in my life personally, and I'm just talking about me now very selfishly, but everything good that's happened has come from some form of commitment to a longer term vision. That's everything from my personal health, my mental health, my career, everything. At one point I sat down and said, right, where am I going with this? And that's what's been exciting for me about stepping into the new agency and into a whole new industry. I got to do that all over again.
Yeah.
I thought to myself, where do I want to be in a decade? Where do I want my insert anonymous athlete label here to be in a decade?
Yeah.
And I don't know about other people, but those are the things that get me really fucking excited. That's the shit that keeps me the good kind of awake at night. You know,
Yeah.
you're not worried.
Like
You're
excited awake.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so nice when those things come along.
Yeah.
So nice when those things come along.
Well, I think this is a great way to end the conversation. You know, like I totally agree with your point. I totally agree with the long term thing, and I've noticed it myself as well. Once I've started changing things in my life, working more smart. Exactly. Like I only work 4 days a week. Like people think I work like crazy, but I work 4 days a week. I have 1 day off with my baby. I have the weekends off with my girl. It's a different life, but still I managed to run 2 companies, so it's
absolutely.
possible.
But also, what you're doing to wrap it up, I think what you're doing with this channel and what is exactly what other people need to be doing in terms of looking at content as a value provider, not looking at content as an ego stroker. And this is where I think electronic music got it so wrong, rather, because they focused on these flashy after movies, and it was all about them, and it was all about the walking off stage and the bottle and stuff. And you know what? Nowadays, and now where we're at, that doesn't matter.
No,
that doesn't matter, and that sort of content doesn't serve anyone but them. And maybe it looks good when you're doing some generic social media posting video bullshit, I don't know, but content needs to be a value provider. And I think people like you, like Damien Keys, like Adam Ivy, and I guess like Todd McCarthy, people like yourselves are helping people. And that is so important. And it doesn't need to be a sort of holier than thou I'm so helpful kind of thing. It just needs to be done consistently. And well, the last time we had this conversation was a year ago, so that says it all
And
in
it
terms
only
of
got worse,
consistency.
man. I've been creating content like a crazy guy. But yeah,
Yeah, I see you putting the work in, man, and God bless you for doing it. And if anyone was going to take one thing away from this today, from me, it would be just start today. If you don't already like create content, tuck yourself away and think how, as me with my personality and with my brand and with my knowledge, how can I create value
yeah,
for the people that I call my audience? And I
exactly.
tell you what, you're going to come away with some amazing content eventually. Maybe the first few will be shit. Maybe you're going to have to trial and error it,
Trial and
but
error there, exactly.
you're going to get there, and it's going to be fulfilling. It's going to be very fulfilling.
Great, man. Well, thanks again for taking the time to do this. Thanks for sharing your story.
Always a pleasure, man. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch, and maybe I'll see you in a year from now.
Maybe. Yeah. God, I hope I don't lose much more weight. Hey,
Like you've been like the champion of the fighting.
I don't know about that. Yeah. Maybe I'll have a black eye.
Yeah, exactly. Have a good day, man. Thanks.
Thank you, brother.
Bye.